In progress.
All right. All right. First things first, everybody should have received the minutes. Any objections to the minutes from last month? Hearing none, can I get a motion? Oh, somebody's talking or mumbling. I can't quite make that out, but can I get a motion to accept the minutes? Then everybody speak at once.
So moved.
Terrific. All right. Any discussion, any corrections? Yes, not. Did I make a motion to accept the minutes? I guess I did, didn't I? Did that backwards. All right, go off to a great start. Let's see if we can find Officer Winkle. By the way, Officer Winkle is the Officer of the Month. We can just.
Hello,
there
can
you are.
everybody hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Congratulations.
All right. Well, thank you. Boy, I don't feel like the Officer of the Month after looking at these crime stats. It was a very, very busy month in your CAC. Larceny for motor vehicles up, assaults up, vandalism up, larcenies up, fraud up, drugs up. We're in the summer, folks. Kids have nothing to do but cause trouble. We're working on it. We have several academies and field training right now. We have a large academy right now, so our police presence will be up. So if you see like multiple officers at a crime scene or at a location, it's usually because there's a field training officer and a training officer. So an officer in training. So you might see a little more presence. We're making arrests. We're clearing cases. It's just the perfect storm right now. And I wish I could give you some better news. But I was looking at the North CAC, which is going on right now, and they're dealing the same thing. It's summertime.
Any comments from the audience?
Wondering, Officer Winkle, and first of all, congratulations and thank you so much for your service. Are you seeing in particular geographical areas where there's a concentration of this happening, or is it fairly widespread through the district?
You're on mute. There you go.
It is throughout the district. I can't pinpoint one spot that's a hot button. One of the issues that we had is we had some kids from Durham, and this just to kind of give you a span of things, they robbed a locksmith in Durham, and they were able to clone a lot of Dodge Challenger car keys. And so for about a month, every Dodge Challenger was probably stolen. And that was just an outside from Durham coming over into our CAC. It's just all over the city, and we're such a mobile society. Buses are free. Cars, they're being unlocked. Key fobs are in it, and I've talked to it, in the past, that as soon as somebody gets access to a car key and a car, now they're mobile, and now they're taking it outside of their area and going to another area. So a lot of times that we're pulling, I can think of one case where it was really local with some kids from Quail Hollow that were staying in the neighborhood, but most of the time it's outside influences coming in.
that.
I actually knew those kids from Quail Hollow. Let's see, Mama Kai, do you have a comment? Lindsay?
I'm just a visitor. I'm not in this area. But happy Monday, everyone. It is always another amazing day in paradise, despite the challenges the city is undergoing. I was just curious if there's any investigation into the history of the perpetrators, if there's any ACEs in their histories, and what we can do with our youth today to try to minimize some of that, as well as identify them and those who are perpetrating and try to get them some help to address them and learn some different skills.
I don't know the answer to that. It's different today than it was when I was, a teenager. When I was a teenager and I went job hunting, I put on my Sunday best, which was just a white dress shirt and tie. And I went to a strip mall and I just went to each store and applied for a job in person right there. That's just not how it works anymore. So kids finding work it is a lot harder. Really, I think it boils down to about 3 to 6% of the youth that are repeat offenders that are causing this. I think there's influences, YouTube. I think there's influences with video games. And I think we're still trying to deal with, 2020 and, the lockdown and, being really unsupervised for a significant period of time. We had an RPD baseball league form. Participation was pretty low. And I guess, baseball is not as popular as it once was. I think football is dominating everything. But I think engaging kids and allowing and being understanding if somebody does engage your child, that they just have the best interest. And I truly think that it's going to swing the other way probably in the next year or two. But the number of kids that I talk to on a daily basis that are so ready to be done and drop out of high school at the age of 16, which they can do, is just absolutely staggering. So if you have, if your child has had friends that they seem to have lost touch with, reach out to those kids and see if they're going to school and encourage them that the education is the one thing that nobody can ever take away from you. And just encourage them to push through it.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Hi, Officer Winkle. My question, actually, I just was wondering if you could give us any further insight on the shooting alert that we got today. I'm the mother of a toddler, and so it was my first experience being notified that the school that my child was in was on lockdown. And the threat was right near my child's school. And so I'm just wondering if you could give us some insight on whatever you're allowed to share.
So when we do a lockdown, there's confirmation that there is somebody with a firearm. And that particular incident was somebody that was struggling. And it wasn't a threat to anybody in the community. I think it was more of a threat towards us and that person. I think the person was just looking for help. And our initial encounter was somebody that was close to that person and initiated us. And I'm thankful that all that went the way it did.
I'm glad to hear that then. That's good. That's
Kathleen?
Oh, thank you, Larry, and thank you, Officer Winkle, for being here. I wanted to follow up on the data that you shared about the various crimes. And is there a particular time of day or day of week or that these things cluster in, or is it just kind of all over the board?
Our vehicle break-ins are typically happening from 3 a.m. until about 6 a.m. Our residential B&Es breaking and enterings, those are occurring between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. So those are typically people are in deep sleep at those hours, or they're not at home. And I think a lot of those spikes is that people are going back to their businesses and they're not working from home. So motion sensor lights are keys. Even if it doesn't deter them, it gives us, when we're responding to these calls, it gives us kind of a path that they're following that we can trace back. Locking your car doors and not having the reputation that your neighborhood is one where people, can come and get things like guns and money and cell phones and electronics. But timeframes 3 to 6 in the morning and then 9 to 1.
Can you explain to me again about the motion sensor lights and how is it that you track that if people have them?
Well, and I go back to when I was relatively young on the police force. We had a span of probably several nights of kids just breaking into houses and cars. And you can get motion sensor lights. It's just a little sensor that screws into your exterior light. You pick up at Ace or Home Depot. And then if something goes by it, like a deer, a dog, or a person, it'll activate your lights. Well, how we were able to track these kids and eventually arrest them was when we were going down the street, we could start picking out street lights that were on and we knew which path that they were taking. Just because of the lights, and that was just an observation, and that just allowed us to set up a perimeter, and it aided our canine as far as picking up, and they call it casting, where to cast the dog, where to go. So that's where the motion sensor lights help us. And then if you have cameras or whatnot, they also help your cameras pick up the bodies as well.
Good point. Is there anybody else out there? Anything I missed? Anybody in the audience? Okay. Thank you, Officer Winkle, and congratulations once and for all. Well done.
All right, thank you, folks. Next month I'll be on vacation. I'll see about getting somebody out there for you guys.
Okay, and we'll also try to take care of that conflict you guys had tonight. 2 CACs in one night, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care. All right. Now let's get to the important stuff. Now that was by far the most important thing of the night for us. Election time. Thad, you out there? Is Thad? Want to see if we had any nominations for officers that I had not heard about. I didn't get any. I'm wondering if Thad had received any.
I
Oh,
think
Thad says, yeah, I see that. Thad says None, because he does not have a microphone. Okay. Well, fortunately for us, we did get a volunteer, Kathleen Cody, and that's why Kathleen's on with us tonight. So Kathleen has volunteered to help us in any way that she can. And what I'd like to do is nominate Kathleen for our open position, our third vice president / secretary, if that's okay with Kathleen. And Kathleen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Larry. Does that mean I have to take minutes? We didn't talk about secretary, we talked about treasurer.
Yeah, we did. We're thinking that we'd get a secretary.
Okay, well, I can help wherever I can. I'm Kathleen Cody. I live on Ortega, right across from the Douglas Elementary School, and am very interested in helping support the work of the community. And I think that together, the neighbors have a major impact in making our community safe and fun and healthy. So I'm a beekeeper. I have bees in my backyard. For anybody out there who also is a beekeeper, I'd love to connect with you. And other than that, I like to garden, and I'm a member of the North Raleigh Rotary Club.
You were more than a member, weren't you?
I actually I'm not the outgoing president.
Okay, bashful Kathleen. Okay, I'd like to nominate Kathleen for our open position. Do I hear a second? Then when everybody come on at once.
That is seconding in the chat.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Okay, and as far as the other officers on the slate, unless we have somebody who would love to take our jobs, I'm still content with being the chairman. Lubin is content with rerunning again as first vice chair. And Shane is content with being the second vice chair. So what I'd like to do now is, again, unless I hear an objection, I should ask, I guess, does anybody have any discussion or objection before I make a motion? Quiet is good. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the current officers and the addition of Kathleen as our officers for the upcoming year.
Second.
Thank you. And don't think I need to do anything further. I guess we should, yeah, you second it. Let's take a vote, I guess. Those in favor? I don't think I did that before. Anybody opposed? Hearing none. They're all elected. Everybody's elected. I guess unopposed. Excellent. All right. Good start to the meeting tonight. Thank you all. And I'll try to get rid of my little glitches here and there. All right. Now, the main topic for the evening, and I'm sure that's what everybody has signed on for. Every time we have a rezoning of any kind, we seem to draw a lot of people. This particular one, from my viewpoint, I thought was necessary to bring in front of everybody because you'll hear from the presenters shortly, and I'm not sure what order you guys want to go in. I think I've made you all co-hosts, but part of the, I guess, notice on social media is the inclusion of a heliport / helipad. And with that, I guess we can start with an introduction to the text change for text change zoning 13-23.
Hey, good evening, Larry. It's Michael Birch. Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Great. And I think Stephen Beattie with Dewitt, Carolinas is also on with me. And so Stephen's going to go first. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen.
You should be able to do that.
Let's see here. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen and let him run through a couple of slides, and then I will pick it up with some of the details on the text change.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. And I might sound a little under the weather. I'm fighting a cold right now. So if I stop to catch my breath or anything, bear with me. Yeah, I'm Stephen Beattie. I'm here on behalf of Dewitt, Carolinas. I've been working on this project since we rezoned it. And just a little bit of history of the developer behind this project. I think it's important to know that within Dewitt, Carolinas, our partners and myself too, we're locals. Todd Said and Ben Poole, they're second generation friends that grew up. And what I've actually received from it is an education.
Can everybody mute their phone if they're not speaking?
Can do that. The world just opens up to you. Yeah. Okay. So apologize. Yeah. Todd and Ben, they grew up going to Eastgate Park before it was even Eastgate Park. Todd grew up on Converse Drive, and they've both been big pillars of our community. I myself, I went to NC State and graduated with an engineering degree and met my wife there, and we're raising our family here in Raleigh. So all that said, we care about this community. We care about delivering something that everybody can be proud of. And I hope the initial shot out the gate in master planning shows that. In the original rezoning in 2016, I believe, Michael, what we were doing is not rezoning for additional density. We were rezoning for height, and it was to allow us to do one thing, and that was give back to the community a 4-acre park throughout the development. Unlike most developments, this is a little unorthodox. You're not going to see a development anchored by a 4-acre park. It's usually anchored by 1 million square feet of retail. And our biggest goal was to generate green space and have that be amenity for not only the exchange, but the community. And it's been well received so far. We've done well with leasing, and we've had a lot of interest with retail, and we're working very closely with the City of Raleigh on the Greenway system. We're advocates of the multimodal bridge, and we want the Greenway system to tie right into this park. We want you to be able to hop on a bike and travel to the art museum, and then go downtown to grab a beer or what have you, and then come back to the exchange. So this is a very pedestrian centric development. One thing that we've done in the design here is we wanted everything to focus inward, so that we created a pedestrian loop that takes everybody in front of retail space. And really the park is the heart of this development. I think some of these moves that we've made in design, you'll see a reaction and why we're asking for these conditions. One is the park. The fact that we've put the 4-acre park through the center is pushing the development out to St. Albans, and that creates multiple pinch points when it comes to the buildings. So that's why we were requesting a setback adjustment. We wanted to put green space in the center and create one large amenity, opposed to putting green space along St. Albans. Also, you'll note that a lot of the retail that faces the park, it's within the setback of a bar or a tavern or anything that's 100% alcohol, correct, Michael? And so that we can't have a place for somebody to go to a winery or a beer garden within the park with this setback. But yeah, I'll I guess the next thing that we probably need to hit on is, where do we stand today with the office tower, Michael? Yep. So these are the social towers. 1000 Social is being topped out tomorrow. We actually have a topping out party, and like I stated before, we've had great success in the market. It's 50% leased, and we hope that we're working on leasing for Tower 2. So this is a unique building. We wanted to create a future focused building that that's something that you wouldn't see here in Raleigh. And I think we achieved it. It's not very tall. It's 12 stories, but I think the sky bridge between the two buildings helps create something that would be iconic. This building, we focused on everything being touchless, destination elevators, touchless access entry, and it's full of amenities. There's a balcony on every level of the deck. This is something that you wouldn't typically see in office, but it's trying to bring something to the market that is future focused, and part of that would be a helipad. So that would be a differentiator, and we think it would bring high caliber companies to Midtown.
Yeah, Stephen, any other, you want to touch on anything else before I kind of get into the details of the request?
No, and this is community engagement, so I don't want to just give a spiel and a story without addressing concerns. So as people ask questions, happy to alleviate any concerns. Again, we're trying to create something that both we're proud of and the community's proud of. So Michael, I think if you can hop into the technical aspects of it, and we'll go from there.
Before you do, Stephen, I think you overlook one of the most important things for the community that we've been asking for, and that's the renaming of Quail Hollow. That's one of the things that we've been after, and we're really pleased that you've at some point you will initiate that and change the name of the street.
Yeah, it's in regards to most of the street naming, you can tell it's pretty unique. We have Sky Garden Way, we have Social Street, I think we have Oakline Drive. These are all names that help generate a brand. And along with Quail Hollow, I know there's a lot of confusion with where Quail Hollow stops and starts, and so we were planning on holding off on that name change until the site just south of us began development, because it would change a lot of residents' addresses. So once that starts, we were going to initiate the name change and hopefully clear up any confusion.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Stephen. So again, my name's Michael Birch with LongLeaf Law Partners, and so I'll just focus on kind of the details of the request. As Larry mentioned, this is a text change to conditions. It's very similar in process to a rezoning, but we are keeping our base districts the same. We are keeping kind of all of our height the same. We're just proposing changes to 4 of the 18 zoning conditions that were part of that 2016 rezoning that Stephen mentioned. And so I kind of just want to hit the high overview of those 4 changes, and then we'll kind of go into detail of each one. So the first is removing the heliport, helipad use from the list of prohibited uses. Want to be clear that this really kind of just puts this property in the same position as all of the other commercially zoned property in the area. And again, I'll kind of get to that. And just that use still requires going through another process, the special use permit process with the Board of Adjustment. The second proposed change is removing the requirement that the kind of bar use be located at least 300 feet from St. Albans and within a multi-tenant building. Again, what we are proposing now is, again, we still want to focus that type of activity interior to the development and not on St. Albans. So I'll show you the proposed language to keep that intent there. Third proposed change is right now there's a kind of 20-foot building setback and parking setback along St. Albans. And we're proposing to modify that, keeping the 20-foot setback on that property closest to, furthest west, closest to the neighborhood, transitioning to a 10-foot setback, and then kind of just following the regular code requirements for the balance, but we'll touch on which properties are affected there. And then finally, changing what is currently a zoning condition that limits intensity to a max number of dwelling units, max number of square footage, et cetera, to what's called a trip budget, where we are just capping the development at a number of peak hour trips in the morning and in the afternoon. And again, I'll kind of touch on the details of that in just a moment. So this is kind of highlights the first two changes that we're proposing. Again, one, removing heliport from the list of prohibited uses, and then second, and I'll kind of focus on that language in red. And so this replaces that 300-foot setback. So we're now saying that there shall be no outdoor seating or primary public interests associated with that bar, nightclub, tavern, lounge use located on the ground story, of buildings facing St. Albans Road right of way. So again, not wanting to have that activity along St. Albans, more interior to the development. But what this would preserve, as Stephen mentioned, is some of that park is within that 300 feet. So allowing kind of a kiosk that may only sell wine or beer, those types of things. And then this exhibit relates to the helipad request for removing that from the list of prohibited uses. So you're probably not aware, but just about every non-residential zoning district allows the heliport use with a special use permit. That's office mixed use, office park, community mixed use, industrial mixed use, and the PD districts. And so essentially just the R4 to R10 and RX districts are those that don't allow heliport. And so what this exhibit was intended to show is that we're trying to just place the exchange project on the same footing as all the other commercially zoned properties in the area. And so the properties highlighted are kind of shaded are those properties where heliport would be allowed with a special use permit. Those that are not shaded, again, are residentially zoned properties primarily. So again, just as Stephen mentioned, this is a kind of forward-looking project, want to be able to adapt in the future, and having the same allowance as all of the other commercial properties in the area is important. And so with regard to the setbacks, again, we're now proposing, instead of just a 20-foot setback along St. Albans, that there almost be kind of a transition of 20-foot setback, 10-foot setback, and then kind of letting the code control. And so I want to highlight where those changes are. So the furthest property that's furthest west, highlighted in yellow, closest to the neighborhood, that's where the 20-foot setback would remain unchanged. The next property just to the right or east of that is where there would now be a 10-foot setback. Initially, we had tried to say, hey, there'll be an average of 10 feet. It just got too hard to how do we calculate that? So we just went with a straight 10-foot setback. And then the property further east, that would just be kind of controlled by the code. Most buildings have at least a 5-foot setback, if not more. But again, as Stephen mentioned, that allows some flexibility in building placement because of the size of the park, which again was not really contemplated at the time when we were going through the rezoning for the first time back in 2016. And so these last couple slides focus on the last proposed change to conditions. This is related to kind of the trip generation. As Stephen mentioned, back in 2016, our rezoning case essentially capped the allowable trips at what could be done under the current zoning at the time, back in 2016, before the initial rezoning. And at that time, staff wanted a cap on the actual intensity. But what we've come to find out is that that really doesn't provide the flexibility that the project needs to respond to the market. Trying to fit development into one of these two scenarios is really not workable anymore. And so what we are asking for is a trip budget. And again, these are same trips that were essentially capped with our prior zoning before the 2016 rezoning. And so we didn't increase, trip generation potential with the 2016 rezoning. And again, we're capping our development of that same trip generation now. It just, by doing a trip budget, it allows for flexibility of amounts of uses. So again, that's just from our old case, in case anybody had any questions about that. And again, that's a summary of our proposed changes. So before opening it up to any questions, I just want to check to see if Stephen had any kind of follow-up comments. But as he mentioned, we're here to address any questions related to this or anything else with the project.
No, I think you covered it, Michael. Yeah, with number 4, big point there, we're not increasing traffic. Yeah, some of these are a result of the evolution of design and master planning that you just don't know in 2016. So, but yeah, here to answer any questions.
Stephen and Michael, I have 2, I guess, from what I've heard from the community. One is about the proposed, first of all, I guess it's going to be a heliport, helistop, helipad. What's the proper terminology?
A helipad is what would be proposed.
Okay, and will it be on the ground or atop a building?
As of right now, we don't know. Again, we're just looking for the ability to react to the market if it becomes an amenity that a company wants, or yeah.
And the other question, if you want to put that slide back up, which showed the 2016 zoning map, well, the building heights, that one, yes. In our discussions, just so everybody's aware, our contention back in 2016 was trying to move things back further from the road. Now, in your case, you've also done the road improvement portion for what'll be the improvements to St. Albans, which the community really appreciates but may not realize. But you also mentioned that rather than the typical 15-foot right-of-way setback, in your case, it's 20 plus another 5 on top of that. So in reality, it could be close to a 30-foot setback. So it's not going to be, as we're seeing with Kane, where it's right on top of the road. You might want to elaborate on that a little bit.
That's right. That setback that we are talking about is measured from the right-of-way line, which is, kind of an imaginary line that you don't see. But I'll see if I have this does a good job of it. You can kind of see where this yellow line is relative to kind of the street in the back of curb. And so, I believe in this area, there's about 12 to 15 feet, if not more, between the back of curb and where the kind of right-of-way line is. And that's then the starting point for that setback. Again, that setback's measured off that yellow line, not kind of where the curb line is or anything else. So you're right. As you're experiencing it in a car or even walking on the sidewalk, the building will be further back than just the setback that we're providing.
Thank you, Michael. All right, let's see if we have any questions coming out of the audience. I'm sure we do.
This is Ted Kissling. I have several questions, if I might. One has to do with the auto access onto St. Albans. I do my grocery shopping at the Harris Teeter. And as I exit that lot in St. Albans, the visibility up and down the street is very poor. And you have to kind of lurch out and hope there's not a car coming because they have on-street parking. Usually it's a panel truck or a big high pickup truck that blocks the visibility of cars coming down the street. And I've seen accidents there because of this. And I'm wondering if affecting this setback, if you're taking that into consideration as far as maybe keeping parking away from the intersection so that people can have better visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of touch on two things there. So one, from a building setback standpoint, absolutely. We at the stage in the process where we come in with a particular development plan for each individual parcel, we have to demonstrate to the city that that building is not kind of impairing sight lines at those intersections or even other driveways that may occur along St. Albans. It's called kind of maintaining those sight triangles. So at a minimum, that has to happen. Then you mentioned kind of on-street parking.
The city has not enforced that, and they ignore on-street parking.
Right.
And basically, whatever the designers thought was happening has not happened, and they never go back and look and correct their errors.
Right. And I was going to kind of say that, we really do not have any control about what happens within that right of way, other than providing the city with that increased right of way. As Larry mentioned, Dewitt has already made all of the street improvements along St. Albans, but because that is the city's right of way, we're really not able to affect one way or the other kind of what happens there. But again, where those parking spaces get marked, ultimately, if there is on-street parking on St. Albans, which again, I don't believe that there's supposed to be any striped there. I think that's supposed to be kind of bike lane and everything else. So that really kind of does come down to an enforcement matter.
And the planning process, you estimate so many trips per hour for your property, but I think the planning process never takes into account all of your neighbors also generating these trips. So the total traffic anticipated for St. Albans is sort of an unknown. And because that's the regulation. I mean, that's nothing you can do about, but it's sort of a flaw with the trending, and that's why we have a lot of congestion.
Well, so just to touch base on that. So we did not have to do a traffic impact analysis during the initial rezoning back in 2016. And that's because we were capping our trip generation at what was allowed under current zoning. But a traffic impact analysis was required at the subdivision stage when Dewitt was creating or proposing the lot layout. And because that occurred after the North Hills East expansion rezoning, it was able to take that into account. And then right when Postal came through with their headquarters rezoning, their traffic impact analysis had to take into account kind of the Dewitt project, as well as the North Hills East, et cetera. So I know when both of these this rezoning case in 2016 was going on at the same time as the North Hills East expansion, and there was this kind of concern that these projects aren't taking each other into account. But I can say that this project did have to take the trips associated with the North Hills East expansion into account because it did a traffic impact analysis after that North Hills East rezoning was approved.
Another area of concern has to do with noise. I think it's increasingly notable about, I live inside the Beltline from North Hills, and we can hear the music concerts from the lawn and the traffic noises are louder, and now we're the news helicopters flying over it, monitoring the traffic during rush hour, and now we're adding other helicopters. What sort of usage is anticipated with any kind of heliport in this situation, and what about other types of traffic generated noises?
Yeah, I'll see if Stephen wants to address the one about the helipad. If not, I'm happy to.
Yeah, the frequency of a helipad, I really have no idea what that would be. Now this is a secondary use to a primary use. This isn't something that's open to the public. So it would be for example, for an office tower, it would be for an office tenant. I wouldn't see the frequency would be anything close to even a hospital. And then in regards to the noise that you're referring to, that is another reason why we focus the development inward, and everything focusing on the park. All the retail faces the park, and the development, your focal points, your main entries all come off of the park. So I hope that mitigates some of that nuisance that you're referring to.
Larry, Bob. Larry, Bob.
Yes. Yes.
I want to ask him have you felt any sensitivity about the helipad at all being a problem? It doesn't seem why it would be, especially if it's located atop of your second tower, knowing of course that you would have to build a structure, to support that because of what you need to have upstairs. Does that seem like something you're comfortable is going to be okay?
That directed to Stephen?
Well, the two developers.
Yes. Yes, we're aware of kind of the requirements from a building code standpoint. Surely, having to build it to be able to, if it is located on the top of a building, being able to accommodate that additional weight and everything else like that, right? The FAA has their standards for that, and I will say, just from a special use permit process, the code has some use specific standards that essentially requires FAA approval, FAA issuance of a certificate, essentially acknowledging the clearance approval, airspace clearance approval. But yes, from a building standpoint, that will have to be anticipated into the construction of the building.
Well, from time to time, the rules associated with landing helicopters are rather flexible, as long as it does not endanger anything on the ground. I happen to have a couple of 1,000 hours of helicopter time.
It sounds like you know what you're talking about. Yes, sir.
I mean, I was military 31 years, and that was the first part of my career.
Wow.
But it does seem very plausible in today's market to have it available atop of one of your buildings. And I would be curious why anyone who was knowledgeable of the process would be that concerned. I would think they would be suffering more from lack of information than knowledge, because atop the building you will have all the firefighting support equipment you could ever imagine in order to have the helipad there.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bob. That's where most of the concern is just knowing more detail about it.
But noise-wise, you'd be much better on the rooftop than you would be trying to, have it stuck somewhere in your park. I mean, come and go. But I don't see why it would be a problem.
Michael, could you take your presentation down?
Yes, sir. I sure can. I will stop sharing. How's that?
That's great. And then I can see where all the hands are now. Alan, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Thank you for joining and showing us the future of this area. One of the things I always liked about your initial proposal and your follow-up was that you had also stated that in the zoning that you were maintaining the bike lanes and then having a wide multi-use path down St. Albans for pedestrians. And also, since it'll be a wide multi-use, then also those who are not comfortable on the road could use it as needed. So with this setback reduction, street trees, things like that, how is that going to affect any of the street tree applications or anything to keep the property green?
Yep, absolutely. So this change in the setback does not affect any of the street tree layout because the street trees will be within the right of way. So in the same, the multi-use path will also be in the right of way. I'll also mention that in that initial 2016 rezoning, we agreed to an enhanced landscaping on, kind of on the other side, in addition to the street trees. And we are not changing that condition at all. We are keeping the enhanced landscaping between the building and the street in the conditions.
Okay, and then my follow-up question. On the helipad, I was reminded by a longtime resident that the first Union building, that is now something else, initially had a helipad back in the day. I cannot remember if there was any noise from it or anything related to that, but because that was way back in my mindset. But if you do go to the board adjustment, would there be an hour restriction to it? Within limits, let's say midnight to 8 or something like that. So they're not coming buzzing in at 3 o'clock in the morning or something.
Right. And so through the special use permit process, there's the ability to add those conditions. And also one of the standards is that it's not kind of injurious to, and the code says folks within 1,000 feet. But I think that's where that hours of operation conversation would come in as well, and trying, making sure that we're able to, provide evidence that meets that standard. But at the time that we would apply for a special use permit, we would also have, we would know who the user is, would know their, needs for that type of like hours of operation and that type of thing. Kind of where we are at in the process right now, we don't have that information because we don't have a user. But once, if we ever got to the special use permit, we would have kind of the user, on board, and we would have those details.
Okay. Thank you for your time. In the future, maybe we can talk about, I know there's future site plans, et cetera, but also maybe just a general reminder of what the right-of-way plan is. Going forward, what was agreed to. I mean, it's a little rusty on me after 7 years, but I did notice that you guys did do your due diligence and did widen the road, so that would allow for the bike lanes or whatever things that the city requires. Thanks again.
Yeah,
thanks again for the presentation.
They did along St. Albans, and I would just note as well, the interior streets are public streets, and Dewitt has also, initiated a process with city staff called a major encroachment agreement that would even provide enhanced streetscape, modern sidewalks in some cases within the development itself along those interior public streets to kind of create, again, kind of that pedestrian oriented, placemaking that kind of goes above and beyond the code.
Shane, Steve, Patrick, I see your hands. Why don't we take Shane first?
Hey, Larry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry. Anyway, I'd just like to say I'm really opposed to the helicopter landing pad because of, you're close to 440, but that helicopter has to come in from somewhere. So it's going to be, it's going to be going close to the neighborhoods. It's going to be flying over the neighborhoods. I live over by Millbrook and Falls, and I can hear the Apaches going from the airport for their drills to the beach. I mean, they're bigger, they're louder, but you're talking about a smaller helicopter, but it's still, it's going to create noise. It's going to create disturbance in the neighborhood. No matter where it lands and where it takes off, there's going to be noise. And like somebody said, the music from the park at North Hills, that music cascades up into the Quail Hollow neighborhood. It carries up from the valley. So a helicopter noise is going to carry. I really like your plan. I like your coming out to the community, and but that helicopter pad, I'm not with that.
So
Okay, Steve?
Hey, Larry, thanks. First on the helipad, yeah, I sort of get that, having been involved in a couple of large economic transactions, bringing people here and stuff like that. It's mostly going to be used as an enticement to possibly get somebody who may need one. But frankly, most companies don't. But it's just, there may be somebody that does. And quite honestly, in most cases, it's a rare type thing. So yeah, it's just one of those things where you put an economic package together and you have a possible tenant. You say, by the way, if you want to bring your helicopter in here, you can. Cool. Maybe it's an enticement. But honestly, a lot of companies don't use choppers especially when you're this close to a international airport. So having said that, the only other question I had was on the, when you talked about the Greenway connection, is there any connection between, no pun intended, but is there any link between what you're talking about in terms of Greenway connection and the big branch connector that is part of the parks bond that's going on?
The Parks and Rec bond that was passed last year, that I think it was 4 million dedicated to the big branch connection, and that was from 440, I believe, to Millbrook, finishing that Greenway system. And so that's two separate things from the multimodal bridge, but in order for that $4 million to come into fruition and actually connect Midtown. Midtown is large island when it comes to the Greenway system. I think Shane might have mentioned this. It's you drive, or I'm sorry, it was Alan. You drive on roads most of the time, but the Greenway system within Midtown is largely on an island. So multimodal bridge, that's something that's moving forward in design with the City of Raleigh, and then the $4 million Parks and Rec bond, I think is to connect from 440 to Millbrook. Michael,
Right.
did I misspeak any of that?
No, I understand that it's a totally separate type thing, but the idea is that if you were going to create some kind of Greenway connection from your development,
yeah, that
would actually create a connection off St. Albans through your development into the Greenway, which would be a perfect type thing.
Yeah, as far as the alignment of that Greenway, right now we don't know if it's going to come in right at the midpoint in the roundabout of our park and where Quail Hollow is, or if it's going to be further south on Quail Hollow or St. Albans. That's to be determined. But either way, we definitely want to connect into the Greenway. So you get off the Greenway and you stop into the park and enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of competing questions around that. The Greenway that Stephen's talking about will come up through their property to St. Albans. And then part of the Greenway is supposed to get up to Eastgate Park or along Quail Hollow Drive, the one that we know as Quail Hollow Drive. Now, the other question is whether it's going to route to the back of Kane's property. In other words, is it gonna be one greenway? It's gonna be multiple greenways and alternate connections. And I think we're gonna have to get somebody to come in and update us now that the plans have gotten a little further along. So, but as far as the project goes, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, your piece is gonna take it up from the multimodal bridge and up to St. Albans.
It's gonna be a collaboration between the city, Kane, and FCP and us. So there's 3 developments that kind of receive this greenway system. Everybody's aware of Kane, and then us, but FCP is developing south of us, and so it will be a collaborative effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, I'm just curious what there might be in the way of regulations by either the state of North Carolina or the county or the FAA regarding helicopter use in Midtown Exchange versus helicopter use that potentially would occur in the future at Duke Raleigh Hospital. Is there enough distance and clearance? Has that question been explored already with all the regulators?
No, we haven't gotten that far, but it has been a question that was asked by our team. I believe it was Bob who spoke on this, but there are multiple levels of regulations that we have to get through if this were to come to fruition, and as Steve mentioned, becomes an economic package to entice a corporate tenant. So this again, like Michael was stating, just gets us on the same entitlement with the surrounding areas to even explore this option.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Stephen, you still have your hand up?
Patrick, did I lose you?
I'm still here.
Patrick, did I cut out there for a second?
I get it. So it's a prerequisite before you can explore if there's any regulation.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Steve, you still have your hand up? Steve? Guess not. Any questions from anybody else that I've overlooked? There was a question coming from Bill about the 2 things, I guess. I started to type a response, but it'd be easier to just let you all know. He typed in a question about the multimodal bridge, and the latest on that is that the new budget for the city has, I believe, $500,000 in it for the next stage of development of the bridge. And that will enable them to better define the area on the property in terms of where the road work will go, where the bridge will go, and so on and so forth, because the development on that same property is actually dependent on that. And as far as the municipal service district, I've actually got a meeting this week to get an update on that. I think they're going to go into the survey mode, and I'm not sure what the next step for that one is, but I can update you that at a later time. But getting back to the exchange, and by the way, what is the proper name? Is it the Exchange Raleigh? Is that the proper name?
That's correct, Larry. This is our marketing team. But yeah, the Exchange Raleigh.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
This is Ted again. I have one other concern. It has to do with senior citizens. I think the development in the city is focused very heavily on pedestrians and bicycles and buses. And being as 79 years old, my perception is the more of this stuff that's implemented, the less user-friendly the city becomes to senior citizens who rely on automobiles to get to where they're going. There's sort of an anti-automobile hostility that pervades the planners. And yet the fastest growing demographic in the city is not young people, it's senior citizens. I find it's downtown makes a lot of noise about pedestrian safety, and then they expand their social district, so you have all these pedestrians walking around with drinking on the streets. How does this improve pedestrian safety? Scooters everywhere and so forth, and I would just express a concern for those people living in the Cardinal, and for those of us who are seniors who may or may not have some reason to go to the Exchange. Don't shut us out. Don't ignore us, please.
Point well taken. Anybody else I've overlooked? I will say, like I said before, with Carolina Dewitt and the lawyer team, you guys have been very open with us for a lot of open discussions. We met recently. I had a lot of questions. They were all answered. I think we've covered most of them tonight. As far as social media, the helipad was the big concern because nobody seemed to know much about it. And as Shane, of course, raised the question of the big question is noise. I think other than that, people probably wouldn't even notice. The hospital used to fly along the belt line. I know that's out of your control, but the concern is well noted about the helicopters flying over neighborhoods, and we can't do anything about the news media. We can't do anything about the military. So we'll leave the rest in your hands. And as far as I know, I think your text change comes up at Planning Commission tomorrow morning. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir. Yeah, and Larry, we just, know Stephen feels the same way, but we really appreciate the opportunity to present to the Midtown CAC. We appreciate y'all's attendance at our neighborhood meetings, and again, just giving us the opportunity to share as much information as we can, answer questions as much as we can, and if there's anything that anyone on here thinks about between now and whenever, either feed them through Larry, or I can also put my information in the chat as well.
We have several other people online tonight. I think we even have a News and Observer reporter on here tonight. I see Bynum is on, Bronwyn is on. Did I overlook anybody else from the city that might be on? To see if perhaps they had a question or concern. And Christina Jones is of course online from the council standpoint. I just want to make sure that we cover all those invited guests that may have different questions that we haven't covered.
Hey, I'll just chime in. I'm Bronwyn. I'm a senior planner with the city. Just echoing again that this case is gonna come to a planning commission for the first appearance tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Everybody is welcome. There will be a public comment period at that meeting. And you'll also be able to find like the staff report and the staff presentation and application materials posted online through board docs. So just want to make sure everybody knew that they had access to that and can definitely keep up with the case as it continues to move along. Thanks.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and a pleasure meeting you virtually.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Anybody else? Bynum, Anna? Okay. Well, this went actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. Maybe it's a good thing we didn't meet in person tonight. I guess we can close the discussion. Wish Carolina Dewitt a lot of future success in their project. They've been a very community sensitive development. If you ride up and down St. Albans, you won't notice it, but as far as road structure, as far as development and community requests in terms of the development, they are the exception. Others that are being developed along St. Albans, I can't say that, for example. As far as road improvement, the St. Albans road improvement will come at some point. I don't know how Kane's going to handle that, since a good part of his property is encroached on the road, and let him mediate that with the city. But he's certainly encroached farther than the width of the road that's supposed to be widened at some point. So should be interesting. That's my point of view. All right, let's close this up, and I appreciate everybody coming to the meeting tonight, and you can stay on if you'd like. Otherwise, you're free to enjoy your free time. We're not so lucky.
Thanks, Larry.
Take care.
Larry, thank you for your time. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Larry. See you, Larry. Thank you.
Okay, miscellaneous business. Couple of small things, and I'm going to actually let you guys out of here early unless there's something else I've overlooked. I will the survey that I harped about. We had 30 respondents. I've got the data pretty much put together, and I will circulate that back out to you in some manner that makes sense to you and sense to me. Got a lot of good input. There wasn't anything that swayed direction one way or the other. People like both the virtual and the in-house meeting format. As far as topics that we're covering in the future, we seem to be hitting most of the things that are of interest to people. Rezonings in particular, trying to keep people current with what's going on in the neighborhood. Trying to think everything else coming about. Oh, the bridge project that I talk about quite often on here, the 4722, the 8-story building that's going to be on the same plot of ground as the landing for the multimodal bridge. Christina Jones and I met with them last week, I believe it was. We stated what we'd like to see in their proposal, some conditions. It was a very healthy discussion. I understand things better from their viewpoint, but they are kind of stuck until they lay out the bridge in a more concise manner in terms of where the building's going to be located. I have a very major concern about the townhomes off of Waketown Drive and whether they're going to be buffered sufficiently. Christina, you still online with us?
Yes, Larry, I am still here.
Yeah, would you like to add anything about that discussion that we had?
Sure. I would actually like to talk about their bridge connection. So they're actually making a street connection that is not required. And I think that's something that I learned during the conversation, because I think I just assumed that they had to do it, and they actually don't have to do it, but they are connecting Computer Drive to Waketown Drive. No, Waketown, right? Is that right? That's right. Waketown Drive. And so that's what they're looking at as their community benefit. So I know that Larry, I'm very grateful that he brought up, affordable housing and how we really want to, put that in every development. And their response was, we want to keep it 5 stories. That's our sweet spot. But because the bridge is coming over, to make that doable, they had to go up and put their parking underneath. So when we talk about affordable housing, they're considering their connection for the 2 streets to make that a more mobile area as being their community contribution with that case. So it was really helpful conversation that let me see things not, I have my lane and then I have to go, oh, wow, okay, let me look at it from a different perspective. So I was really grateful that Larry put that together and that I was able to attend.
Yeah, the only thing I left them with was some kind of condition or at least acknowledgement that I didn't want to see them proceeding until more definition, till this next stage of expenditure of $500,000 for more definition of the site for the multimodal bridge was complete, because they're pushing for 8 stories, and that 8 stories is dependent on the height of the bridge coming over their property. They're assuming it's going to be, what did they say? 40 feet? 40 feet?
40 feet, yes. I'm sorry, it was 40.
So, and that's what pushed them to go to 8 stories, because as Christina mentioned, I'd rather see them stay lower. And from an economic point, they would be better off at a 5-story building, which is far too small for them to include affordable housing. And I kind of buy into that process. Just that the Midtown plan has a clause in there that it should have affordability. But I can't see it in their case. I kind of conceded that to them. So that's kind of where we are with that one. They seem, again, willing to work with us more than when I first met them at the neighborhood meeting.
And Larry, if I could, I just want to add in that as I've been learning about the community, has been the greatest gift for mine to be able to visit with each department. I'm about halfway through, but I met with water, I met with traffic, I met with solid waste. And this case tried on May 16th, they wanted a vote done. And I was like, I haven't even seen it, because it felt like they were kind of trying to like quick it and like rush it through. So I was like, you're going to wait till July 5th because I need to learn. And so I made sure that they met with every department that I thought was concerned there. And then we met with Larry. And so I've been very happy with their responsiveness now. And I'm trying to set that as the tone as we move forward with rezonings. Like, here's the process. You need to go here, here, here before we'll talk, but don't try and just sneak it through, you know, on in a public hearing, because we need to do our due diligence, and that sometimes takes time. You know, we got a lot of cases in front of us. So as I move forward, and as I just want you to see what my brain is thinking about when rezonings are coming through, and why, if something is held, we really are trying to get the work done and have the conversations had.
Yep. And this case is going to come up back in front of council on July 5th, right after the holiday. And it's going to be a very busy agenda from what I can see. So
They're all busy. They just trying to pack it down every meeting. Good grief.
Yep, I know. Sometimes I go, sometimes I sit there 5 or 6 hours and don't get to say anything. We'll talk about that. Anyway, is there anything that I've overlooked? Any question from the audience? Anything anybody wants further information on? Anything I've overlooked?
Larry,
Yes.
do you have in mind meetings in July and August, or is there a plan to skip one of those months? I'm not urging you to do it, you know, I'm just asking.
No, that's an excellent question. I'd like to get a consensus tonight, actually, because August, I think we will definitely meet. Council is out for the month of July. But I mean, it's really, I don't see a pressing need for us to meet in July. And I know a lot of people take vacation. What is the consensus from the group? Perhaps a show of hands of those that would like to take July off. Let's do it that way, by show of hands. All right. So the consensus is that we should meet in July. Is that correct?
Well, only if there is a pressing, you know, zoning change or other topic that needs to be dealt with or needs to be communicated.
There are, I don't know if we can get staff support, and that's what I think it'll depend on for July, but there are a number of issues. We talked about the Greenway for one. And there are a number of other issues that we can talk about. We perhaps might want to talk about the waterfront district and see if we can bring those people in, because there's been a lot of discussion between the Parks Department and the city kind of taking some of their money that they were unexpectedly giving up to spend on a pedestrian bridge that's associated with a private development, but it leads to where the waterfront district is going to go. So we may have that as our topic for next month. Bob, you may want to shed more light on that, since I know.
Well, Larry, I was smiling because the piece you sent out by email was the tops, as things usually are from you. I appreciated that very much. That was a unique evening when that was reviewed. I think it was May the 13th or something like that. Beverly did a top-notch job, and I was proud of the Parks Board because every member at the table, including one of our first-timers, had questions and comments. So the objective is to have a world where in the future the right cases come before the board and before the committees. As you know, there's a spot on the rezoning form that includes, you know, Parks Department and Forestry review. Someone has been making that decision for us, and we want it to be a little more inclusive and bringing things, you know, and Christina, I'm sure, can reinforce that. But we feel like there are cases that need to be at least presented, even if it's not for a decision. I'm listening tonight at the project we had, and there was discussion of a greenway. Well, Parks Board has a greenway committee. It would seem that somewhere in that system, and like Christina's saying, what comes together before you actually get to PC or council, that those avenues would have been approached. And perhaps I'm too much of a military staff officer. We used to take things around to different concerned offices to get their input, so that when it came time to gain the approval, we had those inputs in our documents and our plans already. I think we can do better. I think there's an agreement we can. And that document you put in, sir, was tops. I really enjoyed it. Like that.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
for everybody's background, what happened was I had 2 calls and somebody started to ask about a pedestrian bridge that was cited in the Midtown plan and what I knew about it and whether I was in favor of it. And quite frankly, I had no clue. What I didn't realize that there was, I guess it's a planned development coming off of Hodges Road that had a rezoning and was approved. Now, one piece of that rezoning was for an intercity agreement with the developer to share the cost of a bridge going across Crabtree Creek into the future waterfront district. So
Larry, you know, that night, for the fun of it, I actually got the presenter to say that the bridge was for the enjoyment and appreciation of watching the water flow.
yeah, and it's going to be primarily for those people in the development, if that development ever comes along.
But I was a little tilted towards Mine Creek at the same time.
Yeah, but the funny part was, I mean, all this came to a head in May. So then when I contacted Meg Patton, it turned out that the money was already approved in April. So why he came to you in May, I don't quite understand. So what I've asked for is they approved it in April. You guys rejected it in May. So the question is, what's next and where is the money actually going to come from?
Well, we kind of forced that issue to be brought before us, and hopefully it will be a learning experience somewhere that we can stop those kind of things from having and have the right cases that need to be reviewed and looked at by the right people and not managed around us. And that's kind of what we wanted.
And I'm going to step in just for a second. I'm so sorry, Steve. I know you've had your hand raised. I just want to chime into this discussion because that I have to take full responsibility for, because they came to me maybe in February as the city came to tell me about that. And I was like, right at the beginning, like, I don't even understand what's happening. And so I was like, oh, okay. So as the district counselor for that area, I was like, oh, this sounds great. This sounds great. And having sat on the Parks Board, I didn't even think to contact the Parks Board. So that's fully on me. And I have learned a lot from this. I'm so appreciative for the conversation that Beverly and Larry, your response. It is definitely an eye-opening what I need to do more homework on and make sure that we're including different parts. So I really appreciate you guys writing the letter, contacting me. It's helped me learn a lot, and I will make sure to be much more careful in the future as we ask questions of these agreements.
Thank you.
I still say it's the fault of staff, and staff needs to inform you a little better than what they do. And I know they respond really well to questions that are asked, but I think it's that auxiliary information. For example, tying in the waterfront district in with the bridge request, where each of them were coming from and where the funding. We can do a lot more with the $1 million that's going to go into this little pedestrian bridge, just for reference.
Thank you, guys.
Steve, finally.
Thanks, Larry. No, so I just got to throw out a thing there. And Christina, you know, I appreciate you listening on the Community Connectors program. One of the things we've done with it is it's that I found it's very narrowly focused. So, for example, I'm supposed to work on first meetings for rezoning in District A, and there hasn't been one since in months. I mean, literally, I haven't submitted a billing for months. So one of the things looking at, I think the Community Connectors program is actually a great idea. And I've got 35 years. I don't want to admit that. 35 years in communications background, everything like that. But the idea is you could expand it to the point where if there's something you want to get out there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the first rezoning meeting, because I billed for a second rezoning meeting and didn't realize I wasn't supposed to do that. But so the thing is, if there's certain things you want to get out there, take advantage of these people. And it's not about the billing. It's not even about the money. I really don't care. But the point is, if you want to build a network, these people who volunteered are more than happy to be a network for more than one rezoning meeting or one particular issue, because I think they broke it up between zoning, park and rec, and one or two other things. But the point is, if you want us to reach out there, we can. We're more than happy to. And so, yeah, it's something to think about there, because it's we have a lot to offer. I think from the people, I was really impressed when I went to the first meeting for training, where it was one of the most diverse, fun groups I've hung with since I got out of corporate. I mean, it was just, it was just great. But the point is, if we're limited to going to, first zoning meetings, neighborhood zoning meetings, you're kind of not using the talent to the best of your choice.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being here too. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Can I add one more? I'm sorry, Larry. I know that the meeting's almost, that it's over, but I just wanted to
go right
add
ahead. Be my guest.
I kind of picking back off of what I was saying earlier. What I find in council that's missing is conversation. And I feel that these agendas are packed full with stuff, and it's guiding us to not have time to talk about it. And I've actually spoken with some planning commission members to say, in their recommendation, what I would like to see is for them to recommend it to a committee. So if a case needs more conversation, to say, hey, transportation, it would be really great to go to transportation. Or if we use something like the Shaw case that just went through, I really think that could have gone to every single committee and had a longer conversation so that we understood it better before we sat down and voted. A lot of the work, and we did, I'm not saying there was not education, because there definitely was outside of it, but I'd really love for council to have a more central conversation so everyone can see what's discussed. And the only place we have for that are committee meetings, and we never meet. Like, I'm on 2 committees and I've met twice in 7 months, and we just don't. So if we need to take it from out of our ability, because right now what they tell me is that we have to send something to committee, but I'm still learning what to send. And by the time it's at public hearing, it's too late. Then it's just stalling. So I think a really good avenue for that is going to be the planning commission taking that on, and within their recommendations, still voting, whether they want to approve or deny something, but then saying before going to public hearing, I think we think it should go to however many committees they need it to go to. Does that mean that council is ultimately going to send it there? Maybe not. It's still, you need 5 votes to send it. So, but at least it would be a public explanation as to why we're not having that conversation. So I think that will help that in the future.
I'll just throw out that I have tried for 2 months now to get traffic calming into a transportation committee meeting, and I've been blocked twice, but I am not done. All right.
Right. Thank you.
Larry, can I ask Christina a question?
Sure, go for it.
Christina, one of the things that I have found on the Parks Board is there are discussions that I would like to have on issues. And there are just things that you don't discuss sitting at the table, the kind of conversation you might wish you had. And I have leaned towards asking for work sessions. And I guess we haven't had that. There's a phobia about you can't have a quorum, meet anywhere. how do you think that we can have, we text and call and talk and whatever, because we're not a quasi judicial. How can we have better discussion among the group? And it may be the same problem you have on council.
It's
Is that when
exactly the
there's
same
an
problem.
issue, and we can make up one, 4-laning Fayetteville Street, and but you all have an idea and a thing about it, and you sit down at the table, the camera's running, you're in a formal atmosphere, you've got rules, decorum, and everything. And what I really want to do is get over here, and in Congress they call it caucus, I guess. How do we get more internal discussion?
I
of
think my
issues?
advice would be the same, because I mean, I sat on that board and I know exactly what you're talking about. Everything in the Parks Board meeting is very similar to council, where it's scripted and you want to get through. So
It's
I
all
would give you
managed.
the same advice.
Yeah.
I would give you the same advice to do it in committee. So you have 4 committees. I don't know if Parks is still up, but I would bring,
Okay.
is Parks back now?
Yeah, I think so. It was
Awesome.
well,
So I would send it to one of your 4 committees. Otherwise, have it speak to Giovanna prior to, and get it added to the next agenda. So I think where it becomes a problem is if we try and talk about it spur of the moment, meaning that it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
But if you ask Giovanna to put it on the agenda for the next month, then it's there to talk about, and staff has to be there to answer questions.
well, that's kind of how we got the one Larry was talking about on the agenda. It came up, and we brought it from our side to Stephen.
Yeah.
And they pretty well had to put it on the agenda, but
Yeah, and use Beverly. Beverly is a bulldog. So you want something on there, and talk to Beverly. She will get it there.
she is closely akin to Mike Wallace.
Awesome. Thank you for the question. though.
Thank you.
Steve, before I get to you, I want to get back to Patrick. I had him, I lost him. Patrick, you still with us?
I am. I was actually kind of waiting for towards the end of the meeting.
Okay. Want me to go to Steve?
Sure.
Steve, you still have your hand up? Guess not. Patrick, I think we're at the end of the meeting. I think it's your time.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to mention for those who have attended the MCAC for a long while and remember our in-person meetings with Peggy Ray as our greeter and who made sure everybody signed in, and she always had trinkets to hand out.
Andy.
Right. Those of you who remember her, this past Saturday, she passed away after a 2-year struggle with cancer. And she was a great, great, great neighbor and participant in the MCAC. It's a shame. We're going to miss her.
Thank you, Patrick. I meant to mention that earlier. Yeah, that's, we lost Peggy, we lost Susan.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's a sign of age, I guess. Fortunately, we're still here. All right, is there anything else? Would you guys like to see, since we have a little time before I cut you loose, would you like to see a scenario that I've been trying to get to city council with on traffic calming? You want to see the situation on Hardemont?
Yes.
I'll show you. Let me share my screen. And
By the way, Larry, I'm inviting Will Shoemaker to our July 10th CAC meeting.
oh, I'll be there.
Okay.
Give me 2 seconds here to bring this up. Should have had this ready to go, would have been better.
While you're doing that, the problem some of us have is going to district meetings and council meetings. We sometimes forget what we have not had at our local meeting. So that's why we're bringing calming to our CAC meeting, because only a couple of us really have seen the traffic calming plans and what's going to be going on. And we need to have more people informed.
Yeah, but the plan is good. The problem isn't the plan. The problem is the execution, and it's bad.
Sure.
Let me show you this, and you'll notice the damaged barrels, the damaged pylons. It's a fun minute or two.
That's the one you spoke of in your document, right?
Yep.
That's why they make those things mountable.
That sign's been knocked down.
It's not going to stay.
That's where they drive through. Yeah, that one's laying on the ground. Try making a right-hand turn.
Well, they're trying.
Well,
That's the way it should be.
but in all fairness, they've restriped the humps, and there are now arrows going around that traffic circle too. So
Yes.
most of it's been, and there's actual markers on either side of most of the humps at this point. So
Yeah,
Well,
they're getting
it just-
better.
it wasn't in the best order. I mean, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I look at St. Albans, and I look at to me the thank goodness we're not on Brentwood Road. I mean, to me, that one's even more scary than anything done on Hardemont.
Yeah.
But I will also say that I just noticed around the city, and I guess maybe the police will catch the person that does it. It seems like if there is a post in the middle of the road, somebody has cleaned it off. And,
Right.
and I don't know, I guess it's some new habit or fun thing they do, but I go out there and there'll be a nice sign marker saying, divided road, like in your presentation. And then I come back a couple days later and it's clipped off.
Yep.
And then a couple days after that, they'll put a little yellow bollard up there, orange bollard, to tell people where the end of the median is. And that's clipped off. And I'm like, is somebody just running over these things on purpose? Because I cannot imagine that many people would hit them. But
I don't think it's on
U-turns do some
purpose.
of them. U-turns take out some of them, because we have some on Tryon Road that were put up where they're U-turns, and every one of them gets sideswiped. A truck doing a U-turn, the side of the truck goes over the sign and flattens it out.
no, I can see that. That
way.
that answers probably 40% of the cases.
Yeah.
And those barrels disappear because people can't make a right-hand turn and just clobber them.
Well, and then you have the 15% on cell phones. So who knows?
Well, I maintain that there is a maximum speed where the U-turn process actually works. Tryon has several of those built into Part C, and it's supposed to be 45, but it's more like 65. And trying to find a time and a place where you can actually do a U-turn, which is a slow process, becomes a sporting event. I guess we're trying, but
I work off of Creedmoor Road, and we have an outlet of our office on the Creedmoor Road, and I actually go to the next track. Luckily, there's a traffic light that connects to our parking lot, so I can actually use the traffic light, because I just can't pull out on Creedmoor Road because it's a speedway. So
I will say that I took our 21-foot camper trailer out onto Hardemont off Wingate without incident. I didn't hit anything that I'm aware of, and the most trauma-oriented minute was going over the humps, but you know, hey, I didn't hit. So it actually works. I mean, let's face it, we get to a point where everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe people are speeding like this. They have to stop. And then you do things that slow them down. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing stuff like this because people are slowing down. It does get a little silly.
Steve, just out of curiosity, you were making a left turn onto Hardemont, right?
No, I actually did it right.
Really? And you missed the
Yeah.
curbing? Amazing.
I missed everything, Larry. It was pretty good.
Did you go into the lane?
I did a left and a right. I did both. So
Did you go into the lane for the people coming the other way?
Yeah, you know, hey, that's their problem.
They can blow the horn. You understand what all this means.
I'll just end this with one comment. They posted the signs right on top of the speed humps, and it says 25 miles an hour. And I had to instruct them that if you hit that speed hump at 25 miles an hour, your car is going to be up in the air. It really intended for about 15 miles an hour.
Yeah, 25 is a little rough. I did hit it with my bike at 20, and I got, you know, it was fun.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, quickly, one of the ones that I agreed to is Fairway Road out here off of Tryon. And it's on the list to have traffic calming. Right now, you can't drive it at 20 miles an hour. It's so full. It's so full of potholes. You can't drive it. But they have promised to resurface the road. And once it's resurfaced, the speed will pick up. And there's a daycare center on that road. So I had to kind of play the game and plan ahead.
I wonder where you are on the list for paving.
I'm on Tryon, but Fairway runs near Raleigh Golf Course, Raleigh RGA, and between Tryon and Carolina Pines. And right now, like I said, it's so full of potholes, they don't make a car. They can drive it at 25 miles an hour.
My personal remembrance of, I used to live across from Cooper's Dam. I used to live in one of the vacant lots that are there. That's actually a city park now. And Quail Hollow used to be a nice, easy come lately road to drive down. There wasn't a stop sign at Ortega. There wasn't anything. And it was full of potholes at one time.
Hey,
and nobody sped. And then they asphalted the thing and it turned into a super speedway down the hill right in front of our house. And I'm like, just leave a few potholes in, you know, that'll
what I got, sir.
So, but you can't do that. I'm an engineer. You just can't do that. But we gotta come up with something else.
All right, y'all. I think we're actually going to sign off a little early tonight. Appreciate everybody coming, everybody who might still be online. Really appreciate hanging in with us. And looks like we'll probably see you in July. Thanks for attending, Bob. It was good to see you.
Thank you, Larry. It's a blast. Appreciate it.
Night, everybody.
All right.